For the people that are the most stuck, I generally ask them to steer themselves to their funnest friend. If they're just in a place where they can't figure out what joy means for them, we know the neuroscience behind this with between social contagion and mirror neurons. Like if you can just get yourself with someone that has enough care for you that they're willing to give that to you and just to be in their space, generally that is like the best catalyst to get you from that zero.
Welcome to the Fun and Bliss Show,
where fun is our practice.
and bliss is our lifestyle.
I'm Monique.
And I'm Moneeka.
This is a show to help you laugh louder,
Dance more often,
savor the silly and sacred alike,
and turn fun into a blisscipline.
so we can live lives of more ease, love, prosperity, and joy.
Let's go!
Hey, everybody!
Hello, everybody!
Welcome back to the Fun and Bliss Show. This is the podcast where fun becomes your practice.
And bliss becomes your lifestyle.
I'm Monique Halm, author of Fun is the Way.
And I am Moneeka Sawyer, author of Choose Bliss. And I'm also making a movie of the same name.
Yay! So, together we're here to remind you that fun isn't frivolous. It's the most powerful thing you're probably not doing enough of.
And you
Oh.
should be.
Yes, you should be. So, what did you do for fun today, Monica?
So I did something really goofy. So if for those of you that are listening to this, I just want you to know that we also have this on our YouTube channel. And so I have this backdrop behind me. I've had a podcast for years on my own, and I've had this backdrop ever since. And I'm just bored out of my mind with this background. So today I went in, my husband's going to install a green screen, and I went online to find backdrops. And it was so much fun because I put in heart bubbles. And so,
Ah,
so all over my screen are these pink heart bubbles, which I know sounds like complete silliness, but it was so much fun.
I love that. Maybe we should try different silly, playful, fun backdrops each
Yeah.
time.
Well, now that I got a backdrop for a green screen for the first time in 5 years for my podcast, I'm going to play with that a little bit.
Love that. That sounds like lots of fun. Awesome. So for me, for fun today, I went on a sunrise walk with my friend Jackie. So she is my neighbor and the executive director of this arts organization near me. And so she just walks up the hill and by my house, and at 6:15 we leave with my puppy. And the sun was rising, and this is just like a delicious way to start the day. So that was some fun for me today.
I love that. And that is one of your blissciplines,
That is
right,
one of my
Monique?
disciplines. Yes,
Yeah.
my daily morning sunrise walk.
Yeah.
So I did that. And the other fun thing is we just had a really fun interview.
Yeah, it's our first one, you guys. This is the first time that Monique and I got together and actually interviewed somebody together. And we've both had our own podcasts. So we're both used to being our own host. So we weren't sure how that was going to work out. I think it worked out really well. It was so much fun.
Yeah, you'll have to let us know. But I'm really, yeah, so please comment, let us know. And let us know what you thought of our guests. So I love this interview, and you're going to be so excited. I think everybody who's listening, because our guest today is Dr. Mike Rucker. He is a behavioral scientist and the author of The Fun Habit, which is a great book on the science of why fun matters so much more than we think. So I love it because this was the scientific backdrop for what we're doing here and why it like really, really makes a difference.
And that's why it's so perfect to be the first interview. Like, I can't even believe that was out there and that he said yes. So that was amazing. The conversation was packed with wisdom, science, and lots of yummy, actionable, fun tips. So you'll learn fun is more than a feeling. It's a decision that we make. It's actions that we take. And he gives us lots of great tips on how to bring it back into our life. Because you know what? I think naturally we know how to have fun, but sometimes we forget. So I think this will really help to remind us.
Yeah. So if you are feeling busy, burned out, like in too much serious mode, then this is for you. And if you know anybody else who you think could use a little bit more fun in their lives, like, please share this with them. And say, hey, sister or brother, I want you to have as much fun as I'm having. So, like, share this. And now let's dive in. And here is our conversation with Dr. Mike Rucker.
Let's talk about what we were just talking about. Before we record.
Yeah, we're discussing both of our penchants for enjoying our days, right?
Yes. And committing to fun. Right? You said
Every single day.
Fun. So,
Yeah, I want to hear about how you got started as well, but I think at the beginning of the year, there's always this stuff online with regards to how to set up these things that you want to do with regards to new year, new you, and 75 hard always comes up. I don't know, for folks that aren't familiar with it, it's generally, there's different versions of it, but it's engaging in just an immense amount of stuff for 75 days. If you have a spiritual slant, it's like reading a Bible verse and meditating for 20 minutes and making sure you drink 8 glasses of water and make sure you get to the gym. Like, the bar is so high. And then this ridiculous constraint that if you fail one of those days, you have to restart 75. And based on my research, when you create these things where the bar is pretty high, granted, the folks that survive it have these great stories to tell, so you hear a lot about them, but it generally leaves a lot of folks by the wayside. And the folks that aren't able to complete it generally feel worse off than when they started. So I wanted to put a colorful spin on the fact that this had gained some traction, where you really enjoy what you're trying to go out and do. And if one of the days doesn't happen to go your way, you just get to pick up fun the next day. 91 fun rind, and it was 3 months. And so I went with it, and it was really enjoyable. I think what I found in my own research is whenever you can be deliberate about being premeditated on the things that you want to do, they tend to happen more often. And it's really that simple. And so having a cue of, okay, so what is it the next day that I want to do that's going to bring joy into my life? That simple instruction or heuristic, again, can be all it takes, especially if all you need is microjoys, which is what most of us need anyways.
love that. Love that.
Is that what you found yourself? You were like, if I'm more deliberate about inviting it in, it will be there. And then you just found that it was, and you're like, I don't want this to stop. Is that how your journey started?
Exactly. I thought I would do 50 days of fun. And then by 46, I realized I had fallen very deeply in love with my life. And I was like, I could stop at 50, but why?
Not even point that.
Why would I stop this? No, I want to do a whole year. And you know what? I'm going to invite other people to join me. And so I started this Facebook group, Fabulous Fun, Year Around the Sun. And each month we had themed, we're going to do Outrageous October and Naughty November. And each month had a theme. But it was, just doing these little deliberate acts of fun. It's life-changing.
Yeah, it really is.
Mike, you mentioned this term that I think is really interesting. You said microjoys. Could you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I think especially here in the West, we tend to look at these events, right? Like whether they're vacations or acts of leisure, as needing to be big things. And yet that becomes problematic because if we put off having joyful experiences to these once or twice a year vacations or whatever it is, and perhaps those are 1 or 2 things go awry, then we've essentially mortgaged off the ability to enjoy ourselves with this ill consequence, right? And so we got to wait to the next year. And yet we know that joyful things are abundant all over, especially if we frame them that way, right? Like coffee with a friend or going to a comedy show or something as simple as playing with your pet. These things that are really accessible to us and make us happy in the moment and draw us into the present. We really can do them almost any time, but it's certainly not like this second within 24, 48 hours. And yet we forget that. So we plan and wait for something to be monumental at some future state. And again, the fact that we are mortgaging those off has become quite problematic. Microjoy is just something that's easily accessible at any time. I tend to call it pleasing activities because I have this model called the play model. And so for me, pleasing just means it's something that is pleasing that you can do almost any time.
I love that. I'd like to go back. What even got you studying fun, right? And like what causes aha around fun?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to be invited to be a charter member of the International Positive Psychology Association. And why I bring that up is just for folks that don't know what positive psychology is, it's essentially a facet of psychology that was only invented at the turn of the millennium. So up until 2000, we had only looked at psychology really to treat poor mental conditions, poor mental hygiene and clinical conditions. Yet we had these tools at our disposal, like mindfulness and flow and gratitude, that could really help anyone. And a bunch of academics and practitioners got together and were like, we're going to start talking about this. Because we hadn't talked about anything up until that point, we really focused on happiness at the onset. And so we created things like the World Happiness Index and started pitting countries against each other. Like, why aren't we as happy as Sweden and Denmark, right? And things of that nature. And we started to quantify happiness. In psychology, we call it subjective well-being. And to make a long story short, what happened is we over-indexed on this idea of holding up happiness as an ideal. And paradoxically, some of the interventions that were being put out there, and not necessarily by academics, they were taking science and applying it in weird ways. One of the ones that has been talked about quite a bit is gratitude. Like, for some reason, this gratitude is an amazing tool, but someone like took this obscure study and all of a sudden we heard in the mainstream that we should all be grateful for 3 things a day. And we found that some folks that might be going through something in their life, forcing them to think about 3 things to be grateful for in a day that they're not really grateful for because maybe they're going through a hardship or whatever, can actually have a negative consequence on mental health. And there were all these things that we were trying to make people more happy, but getting them to focus on happiness was becoming problematic. And I found myself as one of those because I was a zealot of the space. And so my personal story is I lost my younger brother. And so that should have been a period of mourning, right? Like figuring out how to unpack that. And yet I was like Pollyanna, like I can will myself back into happiness because I've been successful at doing that before. And yet when I was trying to do it in a space where it really wasn't appropriate to be happy, it was becoming really unhappy. And so I wanted to figure out, okay, what had happened here? And luckily, or I guess fortunately would be a better frame, some really interesting research course correcting where we were heading with positive psychology had come out. And that is that holding up happiness as an ideal where we ruminate on constantly figuring out how we can become a little bit more happy is really the only sort of thing we need to iron out. And so being happiness in the moment and enjoying joy where our feet are is always appropriate. And it was the chasing of happiness that had become problematic. So I needed to figure out, okay, so what does that mean in the simplest terms? And what it means, quite frankly, is that if we can enjoy what we're doing at any given point, it doesn't matter our emotional circumstance. We really can find that joy. And whether it's a temporary escape from the things that, are bothering us in the moment, or it is accretive, like you and I discussed, we're building that resilience each day because we are grateful for the abundance of joy in our life. That is a tool that is something that has more lasting appeal rather than looking at happiness as this ideal and trying to design a life where every day we're finding happiness. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
And actually, Mike, I talk about bliss as opposed to just fun and happiness. And that was my big thing too. So I don't know if you read the study at UC Berkeley about this. They did a big study on smiling. Did you ever read that study? It was 1990.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
I
actually was
haven't
in
read
that
it.
study.
I read the adjacent research around it. I think that's another one of those interesting studies, right? Where I think Tony Robbins clinged on to it and might have overprescribed the findings from that particular study.
Yeah. I was one of the very first people in that study.
Oh, wow.
And like my interest in this sort of joy feeling is very long lasting. It started a long time ago. But I also found that the happiness piece it's not real. It's like it doesn't allow for the full range of human emotion, and it takes away from the human experience. And I think we have a right to the whole experience. And so when I talk about bliss, it is more that deep, sort of like a predisposition to joy, but it doesn't mean that you're happy all the time.
Yeah.
So I really resonated with your work around that. Yours is much more like action oriented. Let's go do something. Mine is more of a let's create the habits that are, we call them blissciplines, that create that sort of joy equilibrium. So I say that you can have your full range of emotions, but bliss is your home emotional state. That's where you always come home to at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But it really resonated with me, what you're talking about. We are coming at it from different directions.
Yeah. I think the work there that I often cite is Barbara Fredrickson's, because initially I think she was part of all of us that were building that understanding. And so how do we get someone that's not where they want to be to where they are? But exactly what you're saying, that was never meant to be longitudinal. It was more to be like, okay, how can we create healthy escapes from someone that needs that reprieve? But if you try to lock that in, you lose all emotional flexibility. In her research, she calls it broaden and build, right? Because we need the entire palette. What we know is that if you believe maladaptively that you're always supposed to be happy, what happens when life's natural slings and arrows come at you? Then you don't have the resilience to be able to get through that. but fun is always there. And knowing that can be enough, right? Okay, this is going to be a couple hours where I need to figure out the meaning of this really crappy thing that happened to me. But I know tomorrow I can go have fun with my best friend. And so that's much different than how can we have no bad days?
Yeah. So I have a question about that, right? So if someone listening is on like a 0 on the fun meter, if there's a lot that's happening that's really, I'm sorry to hear about your brother. Tomorrow is going to be the anniversary of my older brother's passing. Unfortunately, we're in this club, which is not a club to be in, but so this life happens. How can somebody listening make that micro shift so that they can spark a little joy, more fun in their lives? How can we action that?
Yeah, for the people that are the most stuck, I generally ask them to steer themselves to their funnest friend. If they're just in a place where they can't figure out what joy means for them, we know the neuroscience behind this was between social contagion and mirror neurons. Like if you can just get yourself with someone that has enough care for you that they're willing to give that to you and just to be in their space, generally that is like the best catalyst to get you from that 0. Because trying to figure it out yourself is just putting an extra burden on that. And we're talking about that true 0, right? Where folks just feel stuck and I don't even know what brings me joy anymore. I found the best intervention, and it doesn't work every time, but is like, what is that friend? Because the cool thing about fun is it's unique as everyone listening to this podcast, but your friends are there because they're part of your tribe, right? So they're going to know what you like. And the person that you see, and maybe idolize is probably a strong word, but that you are like, this person, just when I'm with them, I feel happy. Like letting them know, right? So creating that connection, but then allowing yourself to pick up their good vibes, for me, has the highest rate of success to get you out of that.
Genius.
Yes. And Mike, sometimes when you're in that place of 0, reaching out to a friend feels really hard. And a lot of times we'll make the excuse, I don't have the time for that, or I don't want to disturb their time, or there's a time element around fun and all of it, whether it's this or whatever else we're doing. What would you say to people that feel like they're too busy or they're hurting too much and they can't even fathom making the time for other people, whatever that is? What would you say to them?
I'll just be frank. Like one of the things that surprised me when the book came out was how much it resonated with women stuck in the sandwich generation. And so for folks that don't know that term, I mean, it's the first time, like with regards to the modern era, right, where we're having kids later in life, but unfortunately our parents are living longer. And so in every previous generation, generally we would have our parents to help us raise our kids, right? And so we're more time poor than ever, and especially busy moms that feel this sense of duty to take care of both aging parents and kids that are raising, right? But what we know about that group specifically is that if they're depleted, ultimately they lose empathy for that level of service. And so it's such a catch-22, this paradox where they end up losing the ability to serve, which is what really brings them at least contentment in the first place, because they're not pulling any time off the table for themselves to be able to recharge their batteries. And so even though you need to get in front of it, it's not a selfish act to take 2 or 3 hours out of the 168 that you have to make sure that, and it's not, again, I think I put in the book, it's not that metaphor of you have to put on your air mask first. You don't have, because that gives you this sense of, oh, it's a selfish act. You really could look at it as an act of being able to set yourself up to be the best version of yourself to serve others. If that's truly that anchor that's holding you from saying, I just don't have the time. Because if you're not doing that, ultimately what happens is that you will reach a level of burnout. Burnout is not just for your professional life, right? And so if you're so time poor that you're like, I can't even take an hour out of the week for myself, then you need to reevaluate it. The science behind this is called the hedonic flexibility principle. It was probably the biggest aha when I was putting together the research for the book. And what we found is that folks that do have that maladaptive heuristic, right, that are like, I just don't have the time to do this for myself, find themselves in this downward spiral where it just gets worse and worse because now they're depleted. Now, instead of doing things that are truly enjoyable, in psychology, we have this geeky word called active leisure. It's really doing something they feel is filling up their fun cup. What happens is that when they do have an hour or two for themselves, they just engage in poor forms of escapism to get out of that thing that's not fun, right? Like I'm from low-level boredom all the way to just being frustrated with the day. And we'll do things like doom scroll social media or plop down on the couch and just watch whatever it is. I don't feel nice watching TV because I'm a big fan of lots of different shows. But the litmus test there is, if you ask me a week from now, could I tell you in rich detail what it was because I really was engaged in the show? Or I'd tell you, like, I remember my the loving embrace of my partner, because that's what was special this time that we were spending together. But if I ask you a week from now, what did you watch? I'm like, I don't know. I just wanted to escape the day. That's what I'm talking about. And that just continues down until, again, you begin to lose empathy for the things that you are trying to do in your productive hours. But what we found is that folks that do put fun and joy into their lives through deliberate design actually now have the vigor and vitality to do things that they want to do. And they're preserving this margin in their 168 to be active. Then they have more to give in the time that they do want to serve. And so it becomes this upward spiral where you find that equilibrium. Like often when folks are like, I don't completely get what he's saying, it's the same awakening that we had in the 90s when we were championing sleep deprivation, right? Hey, true hustlers, money is made when your kids go to sleep. And like now even the most staunch productivity experts know that good sleep hygiene is like the initial tenet of being productive. You don't get 8 hours of sleep, the next day, you're just not going to be very productive. And so we now know, like even the folks that, do want you to grind out 80 hours a week and they start with good sleep. I think we're finding out the same thing with fun, right? Is if you're not enjoying yourself at least some of the time, then you can't show up the next day to do the things that you want to do. And so it's not about this life of whimsy, right? Like we're not saying when me and Monique talk about these long stretches of fun, it's not about having fun the whole entire 24 hours or like going to Burning Man every weekend. It's more about the fact that you're so fun depleted that you're wondering why and how this happened, right? And so we need this course correction. And what we found from multiple studies of the folks that do find this balance. And the reason I bring up sleep is we wouldn't say go sleep 16 hours a day, right? But we do need to say sleep 8 if you're only sleeping 5. We've found the same now with enjoying your time. It's not about enjoying the 16 hours that you are awake in every given day. But if you're not finding 2 or 3 hours out of that 16, we need to figure out why. And some of that might be at work too, right? But if your whole day is drudgery, that is really a recipe for disaster.
Love that. So you're talking about 2 to 3 hours, right? Of like finding fun. How does one do that? Because sometimes, I'll be honest, I have this thing here. It's like a 30-second dance party. So sometimes like fun with me gathering my family, we hit this and we dance for 30 seconds and we're great. And plus maybe a minute of laughter. But it wasn't necessarily hours of fun that I was doing every day, even though it lifts up the whole thing. But talk a little bit more about what that actually means to have a couple hours of fun a day.
Yeah. And I would just back up and say the way I just define fun, and again, it's the geeky psychological viewpoint, is anything on the positive side of valence, which just means, are you deriving pleasure from the thing you're doing? And so I think that's where things get conflated, especially because a lot of our work is adjacent to play. And yeah, these whimsical acts, we know they can be fun. And in fact, I just saw this amazing piece of research where, because a lot of my academic training is in physician burnout. And so these are folks that need good ideas, and something as simple as like creating a hopscotch entryway into the patient room, just so like to remind yourself to be a little bit whimsical can be helpful. But I also think framing fun in that way is one of the roadblocks sometimes, right? Because folks are like, dance party isn't part of, what I would find enjoyable. And again, it's just, then what do you do? Often I use my wife as an example, because for her, fun is serenity. Like fun for her is going by the fireplace and reading a good book, right? It's not about getting everyone involved because she's an introvert, right? And so what is it that you need that you find enjoyable? And then how can you integrate that in? And that could be things at work. Like one of the first places that I start generally, if someone is feeling depleted, is, are you taking your lunch break? And how can we design your lunch break so that it is actually enjoyable for you? Do you need to be around people? So how can we get you out of the office? And if you are in a work environment where you can go engage with friends and kind of detach from what you don't enjoy and make that hour enjoyable. If you're an introvert, like how can you get out to a space where you are alone and you feel that solitude and the calm and serenity of being in a peaceful space? So I think some of it is figuring out what is your definition of an enjoyable act and feeling okay with that. Because I do, as much as the dance thing is like a great idea for you, because I can tell by the smile, and it's probably your tribe is like, yeah, let's do this. Like for some people, they're like, oh my gosh, it's so not fun. We want to be careful and go, it doesn't have to be like spontaneous dance parties. I mean,
I love in your book, you said something about, and actually you just said it earlier today, is that fun is defined in as many different ways as there are listeners listening to this show. Like we each have a different thing. And I think there's a level of guilt sometimes when all your friends want to go out to a bar or go to a dance party and I just want to have some you and me time, some eye contact and a good conversation. That's fun for me, right? And so I love that you specify that fun is a very individual thing. And you said this so many times in your book, and I super appreciated that, because for me, fun looks very different than it does for a lot of people. I also am an introvert. So I'll do a dance party, but I want to do it alone.
Yeah.
I've got the little dance button too, but it's about me getting from my desk and just moving around. And so I love that, Mike, that you say that. And I hope that the audience really feels that, is that we can go out and have fun with the people that we love. And that's awesome. And it's also really important to pay huge attention to what we find is fun and fitting that into our daily life, because all of it replenishes us, but the stuff that specifically lights us up will replenish us more. Do you agree with me on that?
Oh, absolutely. And I think if you do have family members involved, like how can you co-create those experiences? I think oftentimes when there is a mix match, people will often just stall and be like, oh, we don't like the same things. And I find that's almost never true if you do try to create co-create a fun list together. Again, my wife and I have very different preferences because I love high arousal fun, right? Like I'm off running, because you read the book, these endurance races and things like that. But we have this shared love for live comedy. So like we've made sure that every month we just saw Wanda Sykes last Friday. It was amazing. And because we talk to each other about our preferences and what's enjoyable. And then if it is one of these rare occasions where we get to go on a vacation, does the location that we're going to have something that we'll both enjoy? And then oftentimes we can relish and savor that together at dinner because we're off doing the things that we like during the day. And then we get to expand the fun that we already had by sharing those experiences and sharing in the joy that we had separately.
Love that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What is a common fun blocker? What's the thing that secretly sneaks in and steals joy?
There's a lot, unfortunately. We already touched on one, I think, not being present. Unfortunately, so many times we will set ourselves up to go do something that's enjoyable. And then unfortunately, we left our phone on and it just keeps pulling us out at the moment. If we have these micro distractions, it really is hard to take advantage of these micro joys because as soon as we're displaced and we're thinking about something either from the past or the future, because we've been interrupted by whatever it is, an email or text, that really takes out the moment and we can't enjoy those sparse hours that we have. So that's definitely one, not co-creating that experience. So again, not to keep rehashing the things that we already discussed, but it's so unfortunate when two partners that really love each other haven't had that simple conversation about what is it that we both can do together that we would enjoy. Just this kind of expectation that, okay, I'll go do the thing that you like, I'll tag along, and then you come with me, where we're really just observers and not participants. When if we had taken that time, like what is something that we can do together so that we can both enjoy it? And then the last one is tied to an outcome. So this goes back to what we were discussing in the beginning. It's so unfortunate that, especially if you plan this big vacation, because it's what we've been trained to do, especially in North America. Okay, we get, and I talk about this a lot, like we're the second to last with regards to access to leisure, right? We get on average in the US 2 weeks off for 1 year's worth of work. There's only one country worse off than us, Micronesia, at 9 days, right? And because of that, we put so much weight on the big things that we do. And if let's just take Disney as an example, we're going to need to ride all the rides and then that Disney vacation happens to rain. Instead of the fact that we're now in this pretty interesting place with the people that we love, and one small pivot or whatever, go off and get a board game or do whatever you can indoors instead, because it's, oh no, this was meant to be this amazing thing at Disney. Now we've ruined that time that we have with the people that we love and just throw that time away. Those are the three big ones that I see. Some of them being tied to the outcome instead of just being, no matter what happens, I'm going to find the opportunity for joy in this, especially if you're with folks that you want to be with in the first place. Again, not being present, and then two, not co-creating the experiences with one thing.
I wanted to say, let's get a little playful around this. Could you tell us, Mike, something that you've done that's like joyfully rebellious or ridiculously delightful recently that you can point to? Because this is one of the things you mentioned in your book too, is have that list of things, right, that you can point to, that you've had this experience, that it will delight you and you can come back to it, right, either in your memory or in your day. So tell us some of yours that you've done.
The big one, unfortunately, is now a year ago, but when the eclipse was coming through, I just on a whim, I had the points to spare, and I had taken my daughter when she was of age to remember it, but my son was too young. And I pulled him out of school and I said, we're going to go see it because these things are so rare and your sister got to see it with me. And so I want you to have that experience. And those are the things that I try to do from a spontaneous standpoint. But I've really been leaning into shared experiences with them lately. Mainly they're 10 and 13. And so I just don't want to lose that sweet spot. And especially my daughter's already starting to levitate towards teenage stuff where year-old dad isn't as important as it used to be. So I'm in that moment where I want to make sure that I bias all of those sort of wonderful things to things that they want to do, because, even though I firmly believe in this co-creation experience, just seeing the world through their eyes right now is like so wondrous to me. So you can tell by my smile, that's what I love. But a more provocative thing that I have been doing lately, I found this app called Clay Earth that sort of pulls in all of your contacts to the extent that you want it to. So you give it a certain permission, and then it cues you up to reach out to 3 friends a day. And so even though it's not a provocative answer, I think it's been really fun because for me, we live in a rural area of North Carolina and my friends are dispersed all over the US. And so having this sort of technological cue to reach out has been really helpful. And some of the fun that I have nowadays is having conversations with these folks. So like this reminder, to draw me into making sure that I make those connections has been a lot more fun than I thought it would be. At first I was like, oh, okay, I'll do this thing. But like having this reminder to make sure that you're reaching out to 3 people that you have this connection to, because so many of us, especially going back to the sandwich generation, we're so busy, if we don't have that reminder, that nudge, we don't do it. And so that's really brought in so much joy into my life, this simple little Philly app that just randomizes the 3 people that I should reach out to.
I love that. Okay, so next question. You've studied how fun impacts everything from stress to relationships. What's the most surprising ripple effect you've seen when someone commits to a life of fun?
Social contagion. I know we already touched on it a little bit, but I think folks don't understand how much their shared experience affects others. And so going back to the folks that feel guilty about all this, when you do get in that downward spiral and you start to feel depleted, you sometimes don't connect the dots of like, why is everyone else around me feeling this way? And so those subtle shifts, right? If you can lead the way, and again, what you and I were talking about, Monique, it doesn't take much, right? Just a little invitation each day, like how much accretive effect that can have. These simple little reminders so that you start to build that habit in and create that upward spiral, but then just how magically it transfers on. Some people will pick up on, oh, what is this person doing? I want to build my own fun habit, right? But then also just the fact that you're now like in this lighter, more happy mood really does have this transfer effect that is slow. So we're not going to notice it unless we like look at moments in time, but like how infectious it is with whoever you're sharing space with, whether that's at work or at home or both, like how magical that becomes. Because folks that do tend to journal will see over time the longitudinal effects, right? And unlike sleep, where, whether you're getting good sleep or bad sleep, you tend to notice like within a week, oh my goodness, yeah, this is either having a positive effect, like now I'm always in a lighter mood, or 4 or 5 days of bad sleep, I'm not the best version of myself. Unfortunately, joy does take a little bit longer, but like it's not just something for your own betterment. It really is something that affects all of those around you. And we intuitively knew it. To answer your question, the most surprising thing is like how empirically validated that statement is. And yet we don't talk about it enough, right? Like we still look at fun as, oh, okay, but isn't there hard work to be done? Okay, but we also have record levels of burnout across all vocations in the US. Like maybe we should be having a different conversation.
Yeah, that's so true. I definitely saw it with me as I was doing it. Like I said, I was falling deeply in love with my life. So I felt that, though it did take a few weeks. It was around days 30, 40. But also people around me like, wow, you're glowing. What are you doing? What do that, right? And people wanted to join in. It's very contagious.
Like the way I think is that, so not to get all geeky in the science, because but anyone we talk, this comes from social determination theory, right? But we talk about agency and autonomy. And I think as busy adults, we've habituated our lives so much that we forget that we do have agency and autonomy. And the thing is, in the modern era, we have so much of the nonsense bombarded with us all the time because life is abundant of crappy stuff. It always has been, but we've never had it force fed to us this quickly. But the thing is, life is also abundant of amazing stuff. Like joy is all around us. And are you always going to be able to avoid the bad? No. But when you start to get in this habit, like you said, day 30 or 40, you're reminded that even if I have a couple bad days, I can always steer it back into having these good days by my own design. And so just building that in and reminding yourself, like, I have more agency and autonomy than I guess I initially led myself to believe. That is generally all it takes. But again, you got to put in the reps. And oftentimes if someone just does it once or twice, it's not enough. I'm standing on someone else's shoulders here. Have you guys know Cassie Holmes' work? She wrote a really great book herself called The Happier Hour. She's a researcher out of UCLA. And one of her landmark studies, she had folks just go into their weekend, reminding themselves it's a vacation. So just like this prime that, hey, remember Saturday and Sunday is meant to be a respite from your Monday through Friday. And it should be no surprise for anyone that's been with us the whole time is that the folks that do that have a much more enjoyable weekend, and big surprise, in line with the hedonic flexibility principle, show up Monday to work and crush it. But what I find fascinating about her work is people didn't change their behavior during the weekend. Like, it's not like all of a sudden they were building tiki bars or like doing crazy stuff, right? It was just that reminder of, oh yeah, this is meant to be my time. And so being mindful and probably inviting in some micro joys, or if they did want to engage in other relationships, like, hey, let's go do something this weekend. It didn't take like more money or, again, like this radical restructuring of their schedule, just this prime of, hey, some of this time can be used so that you actually smile and enjoy this precious gift we have of being alive.
I love this image of building a tiki bar.
I'm like, I'm the vibe because
What person?
haven't done that one yet.
Thanks for the idea, Mike.
Yeah.
All righty. So, Mike, we are coming to the end of our time together. This has been this amazing conversation. We're going to go into our speed round. But before we do that, do you have something you want to share with the audience that you really want them to remember, or something? It's not really in closing because we'll be closing in a minute, but is there something we missed or that you'd like to share?
I just think that reminder that you do have an opportunity to invite joy in whenever you're ready for it. And so by doing so, by creating that small habit, and you don't have to do it every day if that doesn't fit, maybe just try once a week, whatever suits you, but reminding yourself that you do have that agency and autonomy to bring it in is one. And then the second is, if you do feel this sense of guilt, try to unpack that. Right in the book, I have this acronym I call SAVOR, and the first letter in that acronym is called story editing. And oftentimes just re-examining, like, why is it that I believe that if I take, again, 1 hour out of the 168 I have in any given week, that if I take that 1 hour off the table, somehow I'm being selfish, re-examining why that is and reframing it in a way that if I do that, then the rest of the 167, I'm going to be a better version of myself. And that if I'm driven to serve others, that this isn't a radical act of self-care. It really is just allowing myself to be a better version of myself. If that's what you need, taking that away. If those two things are heard, I'd be happy.
Yay. Thank you.
Okay.
Yay. So, Moneeka, I'm going to let you start with the speed round.
Time for our speed round. Okay. What is your go-to song when you need an instant joy boost?
Oh my gosh, I love music, so I have so many. The one that my son and I have been playing lately, because I think I confess this in the book, I'm a big fan of 90s hip hop, but a lot isn't appropriate for his ears. But House of Pain's Jump Around is a pretty kid-friendly song. And he loves basketball, so it's apropos to get him pumped up for games and things like that. That's it right now. But if you ask
Solid choice. Solid choice.
That's brilliant.
Go ahead, Moneeka.
Okay. So, what's one totally silly thing that never fails to make you laugh?
I don't know if we hit record yet, but right now the silliest thing in our house is our new French bulldog puppy. So he is a nut. And so we've been having so much fun. The kids love it when I like act different characters. So that is, we have this kind of performative art that we all do. So between those two things, playing with the dog and setting up silly games between us, the kids and the puppy, and then, this kind of performative improv that we do together, that's my go-to.
I love that. I've got a dog too, and that's mine too. So
they're such good examples, right?
Play and joy and absolutely.
And just nonsense. It's so ridiculous.
What is going on in their head?
Yes. I do. I love my doggy too. Hair on my feet. Okay, so what's a Bliss-discipline you practice regularly? So something that keeps your fun and joy alive.
Yeah, I think adjacent to making sure that we have joy as abundant, I think we're also, especially because I'm now in the second mountain of life, as it were, is to stay active. And the second letter of SAVOR is activity bundling in the acronym. I shouted out there. And walking and then connecting with friends that I've been inviting in through that clay.earth app. I don't know. I mean, as simple as it sounds, and that might be a good way to wrap things up, is that, right? Like, it doesn't take these grand gestures. Like, again, just this reminder, the subtle nudge to reach out to friends, and then because having these conversations with friends and trying to integrate exercise might be too much for my busy schedule. I've combined the two. And so now I can get myself moving, which makes me feel better. And then also now connecting with friends. So any sense of loneliness is gone, because I do feel this deep sense of connection, because now I'm having conversations with all sorts of friends. Between those two, that's my bliss right now.
Love that.
Yeah, I do too. That's amazing.
And since we started, what's the rest of that letter? The word, like, share it. What's the VOR of that?
Yeah, fair enough. Sorry, I just
I know we could leave it open.
no,
It's
no,
The Fun Habit. It's a great book.
no, totally. Because the other, so V is variable hedonics, and that's really just an ode to the fact that novelty and variety really are the spice of life. And in the book, I go through all the science, but we know that creating new experiences and all these micro joys create new neural pathways in our brain. And so it has a whole host of physiological and psychological benefits, right? We know that, especially someone like yourself that's indexed all these memories, if we do have a bad time, we can go back to those memories and know that those are going to be there again. And then there's all this emerging science that those new neural pathways create scaffolding in our brain. The geeky science word for it is neuroplasticity. And so we know folks that have created these rich tapestries of life through novel experiences, for whatever reason, correlate with good cognitive outcomes later in life. And we think it's because those neural pathways can be used if we start to have poor cognitive health, that can be used to mitigate some of the things that are breaking down. The O is for options, and we discussed that. We know that folks that are premeditated about the things that they want to do, so instead of just waiting for things to happen, get in front of it and invite fun in, have the best outcomes. And so options is just this invitation to be premeditated, create your fun list, because if you have your list in front of you and you've stared at it for 2 weeks and haven't checked anything off, and okay, there it's time. So that tends to create an environment where fun is going to be invited in. And then R is for reminiscing, which is really just gratitude on steroids. How do we expand the value of fun that we're already having? Like I said, it's as simple as a date with your partner to say, hey, this is what I did today. I want to share it with you, and inviting them to do the same so that, that experience there allows you to savor the moments that you've already had. That's the rest.
Mike, we have really enjoyed the book. Both Monique and I have talked about it, and it's so good. So I just want to let everybody know it's called The Fun Habit by Mike Rucker, our guest today. And Mike, could you tell the audience a little bit more about how they can get in touch with you and that sort of thing?
Oh, yeah, of course. Thanks. Yeah, so the book's available wherever you enjoy buying your books. And then I still write about the science of fun for Psychology Today. And then the rest of my media is available at michaelrucker.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for having me. The two Mo's.
Okay. We'll go. Next time we'll have Micah on too. Mike,
have a really fun afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Bye.
Bye. Oh my God, Monique, what an amazing way to kick things off. I think Dr. Rucker brought so much heart and grounded wisdom to this topic of fun and bliss that's not talked about, right? Like, I just thought he was amazing.
I thought it was great too. And it was such a perfect way to start. That was our first ever guest together. And I think that it was fun. It was fun, and we learned a lot. So I'm really grateful to each of you for being here with us for that episode. And I'd love to hear y'all's takeaways. What did you take away from that? And how are you going to put some of that into action?
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us for this first episode, or it's not our first episode, but this first guest episode, and for being part of this new adventure of fun and bliss with us. And if you want to find out more about Dr. Rucker, you can find his book, The Fun Habit, anywhere books are sold, or as he says, anywhere you enjoy buying books.
And there are links below this episode for his website and the book. So definitely check that out. And if you are ready to make fun your Blissipline, we have our Fun and Bliss Collective, and where we're going to have monthly fun challenges, weekly joy sparks, a whole sisterhood of women who are laughing louder, living together. So make sure that you join us there.
We would love to see you, because you know what? Having fun alone, sometimes it's really awesome. But it's a lot more awesome when you get to share it with people that want to enjoy it with you.
Indeed. So we will see you next time on the Fun and Bliss Show. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to the Fun and Bliss Show,
where fun is our practice
and bliss is our lifestyle.
If this episode sparked your joy,
share it, subscribe, and join the movement.
Stay fun.
Stay blissful.
And see you next time.
I spent too long waiting for someday, checking the boxes, doing it right. go start chasing the next thing.